Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are reporting in from. It's awesome to be presenting to you today. Today's presentation again is on image optimizations in the Drupal content management system, focused on cropping control. My name is Philip Steer. I am a senior developer at Design Group, and I'm currently based in Denver, Colorado. I've been a developer in the Drupal community for well over 10 years. I am an Acquia and Platform.sh certified Drupal developer and am the current secretary on the board for the Drupal Colorado nonprofit organization. You can reach me at atten.io. Perfect. In my last presentation about responsive imaging in Drupal, I covered the groundwork for which to lay in order to begin optimizing your image media on your website. Sorry. Real quick, move it over there. I covered what is ultimately the HTML5 picture tag, which formats several different images. It could be different, or they could be different, or they could all be the same but different sizes. It combines them all into a single HTML element that then switches out those images based upon specific screen sizes or viewport dimensions. These specific dimensions are actually written instructions, also known as breakpoints, that Drupal uses to format that picture tag when it ultimately gets displayed on your website. Each image style that you create in Drupal specific to a particular breakpoint gets plugged into a responsive image style setting. And breakpoints can be custom to your theme or from Drupal core or any other contributed module. I generally customize my breakpoints on every project. Image styles, plugging in image styles into the Drupal, into responsive image style settings requires that you, of course, first create those image styles in Drupal, which is a core Drupal functionality. In my previous presentation, I covered setting just a couple of the effects that come out of the box with Drupal when defining image styles. But in this presentation about cropping and image editing, I'll be diving a bit deeper into the image style effects and actually adding to that list that comes shipped with us to Drupal core. Although breakpoints and responsive imaging are important to any website and are practices that should be taken into account, they're not necessarily required for cropping effects and tools that I'll be getting into, but good always to have on your website again. Being a developer who converses quite a lot with clientele, I find myself often needing to be explicit and define further some of the things that I talk about. My presentations are no different, and I would like to define a couple of things here at the start so that we have a bit more context when we cover them. First, crop. I'm sure a lot of you know what that means. Cropping is the removal of unwanted outer areas from a photographic or illustrated image. The process usually consists of the removal of some of the peripheral areas, outside areas of an image, to remove extraneous visual data. And then UX, which stands for user experience, which encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its service, and its products. Today, it'll be Drupal. User experience especially is an important aspect at Design Group and as a personal philosophy of mine. I pride myself and Atten on building some of the best user experiences out there on the internet. A great resource for all things user experience related is the Nielsen Norman Group, nngroup.com. I highly recommend checking this out and all of their research that they've done over the years on user experience. And now with this knowledge in mind, you'll understand both the what and the why of what we'll be going through today. Okay, so you're an editor and you need your images to look different. The way that it looks on the site once you've finished adding and editing your page just isn't the way that you anticipated it looking. And you know your users are expecting the same level of professional quality as you or your company exudes. Out of the box, you may be wondering, why are you even using Drupal in the first place? But rest assured, setting up a cropping system for your editors is a fairly easy process. Okay, putting ourselves back in the shoes of the editor, there are several situations on the site that could use some sort of cropping or image manipulation capabilities, such as I've built a profile page featuring someone's biography and other photography. Unfortunately, the image that I have set for this person's main profile image is not centered exactly where I think it should be. Similar to what you're seeing on the slide here, you can see that the kingfisher bird is off to the right. We want it a little more centered. Um, or maybe you have a supporting image on this person's profile page that features something unwanted, like a beer bottle or something. We just want to crop that out. We'll be giving the means to do that. And another less utilized use case is if you needed like a image to be taller on a mobile device than wider on a desktop device. This would be another use case for using cropping controls to control where Drupal crops that image specific to the mobile device and also specific to like a desktop device. So how exactly do we solve for all these scenarios? Thankfully, with just a few simple important improvements to the media system and Drupal's UX, we'll have our editors and yourself editing images directly in Drupal in no time. Okay. To give and assist editors into editing images directly in Drupal, we'll focus on installing and configuring a couple of different modules. Technically, Drupal's core functionality allows for site builders to set specific cropping and scaling methods, but these settings are limited and they're not going to be nearly as flexible enough to suit all of our editors and our media's needs. Often that's the case. Remember, we are trying to give yourself and your users a better way to automatically adjust images on the fly, all within Drupal, versus manually adjusting them offline, probably in a program like Photoshop or a cheaper knockoff image editor like I use. With the process that we are about to learn how to implement, we'll be able to see the final result a lot more clearly instead of editing and uploading your images and hoping and praying for the best results. First, we'll cover the crop API tool. This really will just serve as the base foundation for cropping capability enhancements in Drupal. There is not a lot to this module up front and not a lot to do but to simply install it. But this is both required and will pave the way for different methods of editing images. Currently, the crop API module is reporting over 100,000 website installations, so it's really well known and maintained and is Drupal 10 compatible. We will then cover the focal point module, which will reside similar to image widget crop as a supplementary module with crop API. This adds onto the image editing process in Drupal a means of choosing a focal point for which to base all subsequent automatic scaling and cropping. This module is listed as one of the recommended modules to use in conjunction with crop API on the crop API project page. And some statistics about this module is that it has over 80,000 reported website installations. So it's also really well maintained and is also Drupal 10 compatible. Image widget crop is the next module that we'll focus on. This is a different option versus the focal point module as opposed to the focal point module, which will give your editors more of a granular approach to image cropping. This is also listed on the recommended modules on the crop API project page, has over 60,000 reported installations, is Drupal 10 compatible, really well maintained as well. Personally, this is my tool of choice for implementing cropping functionality on just about any website using the image widget crop tool. There are definitely more image editing tools available out there, but these two, in conjunction with crop API, are consistently listed as the most utilized and recommended across the Drupal community. Don't worry, We don't have to necessarily step into any sort of developer shoes here. I know when you see API, that's probably what you automatically think. That's what I think. We just need to basically install and define our crop types. That's right. Crop API, again, is a rather basic integration that will allow us to set up crop type entities, which can then be used when defining crop styles during the image style setup phase. I'll get to this. When we are defining different crop types, we'll want to be familiar with image dimensions and the ratios at which they are sized. Crop API provides an intuitive UX dashboard built into Drupal, where you will both define your crop types and easily assign each crop type with specific details, particular to where you want them to be applied. I know there's a lot here, but we'll dive in shortly. I'll bring up my example here and step by step go through this process. Some things to keep in mind are that again, the crop API module is well maintained, over 100,000 reported website usages, and is recommended to use in conjunction with another module like focal point or image widget crop. So going to my example, I'm going to first go to my modules page and look for crop. I can see that I have all three of the aforementioned modules already enabled. I generally stick with one or the other in terms of focal point or image widget crop. In this case, I wanted to display both so you can so I can show off the functionalities of both. But I recommend using image widget crop. To me, it's a lot more flexible. Gives your editors a lot more to control, I guess, in terms of cropping. But I'll also show off a focal point. But you can see that the crop API tool is enabled. The module is enabled. I'll then want to go to my configurations under media. I now have a new option for crop types. And this is where the crop API module adds into the UX for Drupal. Now, again, this is a pretty basic implementation. You are just simply defining crop styles. In this case, focal point, as when I'll get there, will add their own crop type. Once you enable the module, this will automatically be added. But I've also added some crop types here that I'll get into concerning the image widget crop tool. So when you're editing these entities, these crop types, you'll just give it a basic name, description, and aspect ratio. In this case, I've added two crop types for like banner sizes and also for like teaser image sizes as well that have like a specified width and height. And I know based on the pixel dimensions what the ratio is for those image sizes, so that when your users are editing and cropping the photo, ultimately they'll have a resizable box that will stick to these ratio dimensions, and that's where the ratios come into play. I generally don't set a soft or a hard limit. These will just display either a warning once the crop is getting too small, or stop the cropping if it gets to a certain point. I generally don't set these. I trust that the editors know what they're doing and won't crop an image way too small. But these limits are here for you to adjust if necessary. Yeah, and again, teaser, banner, and then that focal point. You can see all the image styles then that these are being used, and we'll get to that. Okay. All right, so first we'll be diving into the focal point module, which really allows you, again, to specify the portion of an image that is most important or that you want to focus on prior to Drupal doing its thing with scaling and cropping. By selecting a focal point during the image editing process, you are better able to control where Drupal scales and crops an image. Now, even though focal point is an easy to use solution for image cropping, it really only provides a focal point tool and nothing else. We'll get into the configurations on the image styles themselves shortly, but focal point really only uses the crop API as a base for a single type of cropping style, which you saw in the crop API entities that I pointed out. That being said, Focal Point is a pretty easy tool to both get up and running with and have your editors use, especially if you have a fairly large site with a lot of image media. Quickly defining these focal points could save you and your editors loads of time. So now during configuration, we'll be first defining image styles using a new widget that we now have to use because of the focal point module being installed, called focal point crop and focal point crop and scale. These are now used instead of the Drupal core crop and scale and crop. As in my previous presentation on responsive imaging, I am building different image styles that relate to breakpoints that I've built into responsive image styles then that I've already defined. You'll see that. You'll see all this set up here shortly. I have already built. We'll then be sure to give our editors the focal point selection tool in the edit forms. Okay, so we already saw that the module has been installed, focal point. I now have a new crop API type called focal point. But now when I go into media and go into my image styles, you can see that I've defined several different image styles here. And again, this all relates to, this will all go into the flow of the responsive image style. So you can see that I have several different banner type focal point image styles set up for each of my breakpoints. Oops, sorry, focal point, medium focal point. All of these are banner-esque and also teaser-esque images as well, image styles. So when I'm editing or adding any image style, I'll have, again, those two new effect types called focal point crop and focal point scale and crop. So you can see that I'm using scale and crop here for this banner type image. And you just give the dimensions that you want Drupal to scale and crop to. And this is versus just the out-of-the-box Drupal scale and crop, which I've also defined an image style for here. Again, this is just the base scale and crop tools, similar to the focal point tools. The only difference is that instead of applying an anchor across your website, whenever this image style is applied, we'll be applying a focal point tool to specific instances of images. So again, this anchor point on just the out of the box applies to all images with this image style versus what we'll be doing on focal point, which will apply a focal point scale and crop to individual instances of the image. And I'll get to that. Media, here's where I've defined those responsive image styles. So for a banner using focal point, I'm then plugging in all of those image styles into the respective breakpoints. To give editors the focal point tool, we'll want to edit the widget being used for the image field. So in this instance, I'm using media entities, and my image fields are on these media entities. So I've defined a media entity specific for focal point. And when I go to fields, I can see that I have my image field here. In form display is where you want to specify the new widget for focal point. So image, here's my image field. I'm specifying image focal point here. There's just a couple of configurations that go along with this widget, just whether you want to display preview link, where you want the default focal point to be, and how your preview style shows up as well. I've defined all this already. So that when I go to, my media, go to my image that's using the focal point tool. So this is going directly into the image when the image is already added to my site. I can readjust the focal point as I see necessary, but you can see when editing now, I have this little cross on top of my image where I can adjust where that focal point leads. Now the preview hasn't worked for me in the past, but let's see. Okay, cool. It does work. So you can see with the preview link, you can see all the image styles that are being applied, and where it will scale and crop based on your focal point selection. So that's a nice feature for the focal point module is the preview link. So for the sloth, this is going to be this image isn't going to result in that much of a change. As you can see, that focal point just got changed a little bit to the right. But I can ultimately see that by comparing just a regular banner image. So you can see this has no focal point attached to it, and the sloth, the head of the sloth, the focal point of the sloth is more off to the right, where when I go to my focal point image, it's a little bit more centered now. Again, focal point will not give me as granular of approach to cropping as the image widget crop you'll see, but you can see it has shifted a little bit based on the rest of the image that is there. Yes. So when adding images, then it's the same. It's the same. You'll go through the same process, just more in a media library context. Now, I don't think I have any images readily available. Let me go to pictures. Let's just choose this guy. So when adding images to your media library, you can configure this add form to use focal point as well. So you can see here, I'm selecting my focal point. I can use the preview, except this is where the preview doesn't work because it's a modal within a modal. But you can get where the focal point module is going to scale and crop this image. I'm just going to exit out of that. And again, you can always go back to your media library and adjust on the fly here. That's the image widget crop. So here's where I can reset that focal point. All right. That's the basis for the focal point module setup. Again, pretty easy. And especially if you have a lot of images on your website that need to be quickly defined for crop types, this is a really good and easy way to go. All right. Moving on to the image widget crop module, we'll need a bit more time, a bit more knowledge, and some planning in order to fully configure image editing to the way that we want. However, in the end, this is my personal recommended approach for the level and degree of customization, and flexibility you can give your editors, yourself, and your system. What the image widget crop module provides to us out of the box is a UX interface for the crop API module. So when we dive into my demo, you'll start to see where crop API will be applied and customized further. As we will find out by diving into my example here soon, the image widget crop module is a bit more time intensive to set up and does require a bit more planning. We'll have to do a bit more upfront work on what types and sizes of images we want across the website. You'll notice that when defining crop styles, image styles, and responsive image styles, that I try and stay as general as possible so that I can apply any of my strategies in multiple instances across the site. We'll also be diving a bit into view modes, where we will be controlling how the image ultimately displays on the front end. Another caveat to the image widget crop module is that you can have a bunch of different cropping options on any given image that may not actually be used. We can certainly ignore these settings as they won't apply, or we can create image entities or media entities like we create node types and specifically apply crop styles accordingly that way. Otherwise, again, this is my recommended approach for most Drupal websites. We'll see shortly just how easy to use this functionality is for yourself and your editors. It's so flexible, even to the degree of specifying different cropping paradigms for mobile devices, like I alluded to in the beginning. During the setup process, we'll be first defining our crop styles from the functionality that the crop API module has given us. And then we are defining image styles. We'll be selecting the manual crop effect option along with a Drupal core image effect option to both set our cropping schema and then use that during the Drupal image editing process. You'll see this. Again, I am setting all these settings on each individual image style that then relates to a responsive image style. So when we're setting this up, again, be sure to do the same. It's the recommended approach for responsive imaging. Okay, we already know that the module is installed, so I'm going to go first to my crop types. You can see that I've already defined 2 different crop types, one for banner, one for teaser. Again, trying to stay as general as possible. This could be even more general, but for my presentation, I thought it pertinent to stick with banner and teaser. Banners using more of like that video aspect ratio. I kind of want those images to reflect that sizing. So I added the ratio 16:9, while my teaser is using a ratio of more 4:3. Again, this is all based on some of these pixel dimensions of what the image actually would appear as on the front end once it's finally output. It's going to be a specific size. I think I based this all around 480 by 360 or 640 by 40. There it is, right in the description. So then once I have these defined, I'll then go to my image styles. So again, media, configuration, media, image styles. And you can see that I have several set up already. Again, all pertaining to responsive image breakpoints. So you see I have 2x large, image widget crop, large image crop, medium, etc., etc. So if I were to edit this medium one, I can see that I have a manual crop defined using that banner crop type, as well as a Drupal scale and crop defined to a specific pixel dimension. And these are new effects added once the image widget crop module has been enabled. The manual crop option, actually, I'm sorry, this is crop API, will add the manual crop option as an effect. So image widget crop does not itself add an image effect. You'll be using the manual crop for that. But what you'll see, what it does add is the UX interface for your editors when editing the images. We'll see that shortly. So I'm using the banner default for this, scaling and cropping as well. Always put the manual crop option before your Drupal scale and crop option so that it applies the schema before it actually scales and crops. And then from here, again, I've plugged all this into a responsive image style for banner in particular. You can see all of my image styles here pertaining to a particular breakpoint. And then the magic that comes with image widget crop again is the cropping tool. So once I have all this defined, I'll want to go to my image field, similar to the focal point crop. Under media types, I define a specific image or a media entity specific for widget cropping. But I can see that I have my image field here. And then on the form display, we'll want to change the widget here to image widget crop. Again, we had focal point as a widget to change to. We also now, in this instance for image widget crop, we have an image widget crop widget that we can define. There are several important configurations with this widget, including the crop types that you want to display to your users. And this is, again, where we can define specific media entities based on the crop types. I generally just keep all my crop types to a single image entity, even if they're not being used. It's still good, I think, to have all my crop types in one place, so that if ever I need to use this type of image entity with a specific crop style, crop type, I can easily enable it here. I don't have any required, but you can select required crop types here, and then similar to focal point, you're choosing your preview image style, your crop preview image style, and then some other settings regarding the crop area. So the end result to all of these configurations is when I go to my media and I am adjusting or editing an image that's already been uploaded to my library with image widget crop tools. I can see now I have a details box or a drop down for those cropping styles. So I have my banner and my teaser, and your editors now get a pretty easily editable interface where I can drag and drop my window as to where I want cropping to be applied. And you can see that it's sticking with the ratios that I set. So you can see that I can't adjust this so it's suddenly a tall image. Because I've defined banner with specific ratios in mind, it will not allow me to specify a crop type outside of that paradigm. I already have cropping styles applied to this image, so I'm just going to go back. And again, so we're looking at just a banner image without any cropping style here. And then we're going to look at the image widget crop image. So this, as you can see, gives me a lot better, a lot more granular approach to cropping. You'd see it's a lot more centered here. I am able to crop out any extraneous data from the image without Drupal doing it for me, similar to what just Drupal core does, or even the focal point does. You saw that focal point was a little bit even more difficult to get a little bit more centered. Here, I know exactly where it's going to be cropped based on that widget that we just saw in the editing interface. All right. That's it. The only other thing is for each of these image styles is the final output of them. So I'm going to go to media types, image widget crop, manage display. I have several different view modes set up for media entities that relate to the fields as they are on the content type. So I have a banner, a teaser, a full, and media library. You can see that image widget crop fixed banner is using my responsive image. This is where the responsive image is then plugged in. I'm choosing my image widget crop so that all my cropping styles then get applied to each of my responsive images, or each of the image styles inside of that responsive image, right? So again, then when I inspect this, it should be formatted accordingly in a picture tag that is responsive. All of these images have the crop style applied to them, and that once I collapse this down to mobile or any smaller to screen sizes, the image will adjust appropriately and be an appropriate size for that image style. Again, getting to my last presentation about responsive images. But it does apply that crop style to all of my image styles. Again, that again relates to the image styles. So as long as I set that crop paradigm on my image styles, they will reflect here in the picture tag. So as you can see, especially with the image widget crop module, there are numerous paradigms that you can apply to your imaging across your website. A lot of common instances that I like to use for image editing are on heroes or banners, as you saw, teasers, cards, portraits. These generally always require that an image be a specified width and height as displayed on the website, and that's what's important about the cropping tools here. Even though both focal point and image widget crop give you similar and sometimes the same effects, they both offer different strategies for how the actual images are cropped. If you are looking for a pretty simple implementation and functionality, focal point may be the way to go. Again, this is especially effective when you have a website with a ton of images and you need to be able to make cropping decisions quickly and efficiently. Using the image widget crop, however, gives you and your users a much more complex setup, but one that offers a lot more flexibility and customizations for a more professional touch. And not to degrade my entire presentation, but again, Drupal does offer some fairly nice image editing strategies out of the box. No, they are not as flexible and customizable as the options we've been through, but they definitely get the job done. When you add or edit any image style, you'll see the list of effects that already come shipped with Drupal. A lot of those are actually, some of them are even like color changing effects, but we're dealing mostly just with scaling and cropping in this instance. You'll see these effects come shipped with Drupal. You'll actually notice you can choose a base focal point, like you saw that anchor field for cropping. But that in itself is being applied to every image that is using that image style versus having the ability to customize it on a per image basis, like focal point or image widget crop. Again, just for clarification, I'll show you this one more time here under configuration, media, image styles, and I have a image style already set up with the base Drupal functionality. Again, I can edit this and adjust that anchor appropriately, but I generally keep it in the center. That's where you generally want all your images scaled and cropped anyways, if using the out-the-box solution. All right, this is just the start, and it's an important stepping stone towards fully optimizing your website's media. Some things to look forward to next in my next presentation is next-gen image formats. I actually just got a question from our sales guy this morning about next-gen image formats, which is awesome. I can't wait to put that all together and have it be more tangible than where we're at now. And also lazy loading, all of which will be separate presentations. So stay tuned.